Hey, by the way, it was an interesting weekend in sports. The Royals pulled it off. The hapless Mets kind of went down in flames. But there are a lot of people who thought that was the way it was going to happen. And Drew Brees, the New Orleans Saints, he set a record. He threw 7 touchdowns. And can you imagine the Giants, I believe it was, losing a game and scoring 49 points and still losing? I mean, it was crazy. I mean, it was just crazy. Sports get to be crazy. But something else is a little crazy. It's not just the Republicans versus the liberal media. The GOP presidential candidates are taking on their own leadership. The Republican National Committee. I told you this a few days ago. The candidates want to take charge of the debate formats and prevent any more debacles like the CNBC debate that took place last week.
So the campaigns got together in a private meeting last night and started coming up with their own ideas. Caitlin Burke has that story.
With 9 days until the next Republican presidential debate, the candidates are demanding some changes be made. Changes that would keep moments like this one at last week's CNBC debate from being necessary.
This is not a cage match. And you look at the questions. Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult 2 people over here? Marco Rubio, why don't you resign? Jeb Bush, why have your numbers fallen? How about talking about the substantive issues people care about?
In a meeting organized by the Carson campaign, representatives from almost all of the other Republican campaigns gathered to discuss how to take more control of the debate formats.
Debates are supposed to be established to help the people get to know the candidates. What it's turned into is a gotcha.
How about we stop letting left-wing liberals moderate Republican debates?
The other major change? The campaigns plan to let the Republican National Committee handle only logistical matters when it comes to organizing the debates, arguing that the committee has failed to represent them effectively.
We're going to insist on opening and closing statements. We're going to negotiate directly with the sponsors about format.
The RNC is now doing damage control. On Saturday, they ordered a high-level shakeup of its debate negotiating team. Sunday's meeting is only the beginning of what could be some major changes to remaining presidential debates. The campaign saying there will be more meetings in the future. Caitlin Burke, CBN News.
Thanks, Caitlin. The whole thing is atavistic. What is wrong with you guys? You put your people up to be slaughtered by their enemies and put them out on display where they don't have a chance to answer back, and it's just outrageous what's being done. Those debates are stupid, and they got too many people out there. The whole thing is flawed, and what happens is they will give the Democrats the necessary weapons, so coming up in the general election, you'll see commercial after commercial after commercial picking up on the little items that were brought out by the other candidates in these various debates. Not a good situation, but we'll see. It's shaking out anyhow. And by the way, the president set a record. I mean, a flat-out record. He came in with a deficit of $10 trillion. When he leaves, he will have doubled it to an astounding $20 trillion. And along the way, Obamacare, they're trying to sign up some more people for it, and the prices of medical support and medical insurance is going up. It's a mess, and but we shouldn't be distracted. Well, in other news, what caused that horrible Russian plane crash that killed more than 200 people? We still don't have the answer. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, an executive from Metrojet says only an external impact could have caused the plane to go down in the Egyptian desert, killing all 224 people on board. He says they've ruled out a problem with the plane or pilot error, but an Egyptian official had previously said the pilot had radioed that the plane was having technical problems and that he was trying to land at the nearest airport. Meanwhile, Russian investigators say the plane broke apart at an altitude of more than 30,000 feet, but so far have not named any possible cause. Russian officials have sent more than 100 rescue experts to assist in the search for the bodies and plane debris. Today, the recovered remains were flown back to Russia. ISIS claimed responsibility for the crash, but many aviation experts dismiss that. Well, here at home, the third season of enrollment in Obamacare has started, and along with it, much higher prices. That's because younger people are avoiding buying insurance, many of them thinking they just don't need it or they simply can't afford it. So not having their money come into the system is one reason prices for insurance for older people are going up. The complicated structure of the law itself is yet another reason prices are rising. Pat?
It is a confused mess. It's been a confused mess, and they're not making it any better. And, you know, the lies that he told, he needs to get called on it. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. Not true. If you like your health plan, you can keep your health plan. Not true. Your cost of medical insurance is going to go down. Not true at all. And you just ask yourself, these guys just keep lying, and the liberal media keeps applauding them. Well, let's go on with what the president thinks about it. John?
Pat, President Obama regards Obamacare as his signature domestic achievement, but he'll leave something else behind as well, a national debt that has nearly doubled by the time he leaves the White House. The Washington Times reports the total debt stood at $10.6 trillion when President Obama came into office, and it will hit $20 trillion as his term ends in 2017. And that number is going to go higher since the caps on spending, known as sequestration, have been abandoned. Well, the Obama administration's relationship with Israel may be extremely strained, but poll after poll shows that a large majority of Americans still support the Jewish state, and none more so than Bible-believing Christians. As Eric Stackelbeck reports, thousands of believers met recently in San Antonio to voice their support for Israel.
Over the past month, Palestinian terrorists have carried out a wave of deadly attacks against Israeli men, women, and children. Meanwhile, Iranian forces advance in Syria, near Israel's doorstep, and they now have the Russian bear in their corner. While enemies of Israel may be on the move, so are its friends. Thousands turned out in force recently, deep in the heart of Texas, to stand with Israel and the Jewish people. This is the 34th consecutive year that Pastor John Hagee has held a night to honor Israel here at Cornerstone Church. And this year, with the Iran nuclear deal at the forefront, the stakes could not be higher.
Iran will use a nuclear bomb against Israel, and they will use it against America, and America is helping make it happen, and every American should be outraged by this incident.
South Carolina Senator Tim Scott echoed Hagee's strong criticism of the Iran nuclear deal.
And in year 5 of the deal, the arms embargo is lifted. Year 8, they get ballistic missiles. And in year 10, they have a straight path to a nuclear weapon. That is not a deal.
Hagee also hit Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas for his incitement of what's being called a Palestinian stabbing intifada that has so far claimed at least 10 Israeli lives.
What should America do to send a message to the Palestinians and Mr. Abbas, the president? Shut off all foreign aid to the Palestinians immediately and permanently. Send a letter to them and to the Iranians that any attack against Israel would be considered an attack on the United States of America.
While the message about the gathering threats was sobering, the event was anything but downbeat. It was a celebration and acknowledgement of God's covenant with Israel and the Jewish people.
An opportunity for Jews and Christians to come together in solidarity and focus not on those things that divide us, but on what we share.
That includes the Old Testament. Senator Scott said it contains a message for America regarding Israel.
A part of the plan that God has for this amazing nation can be found in Psalms 122:6. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. Ha! Woo! And those who do shall prosper.
John Hagee Ministries closed the night to honor Israel by awarding $3.2 million in donations to Israeli and Jewish charities, plus an ambulance. Over the years, the ministry has raised some $95 million for Israel. From Cornerstone Church in San Antonio, Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News.
Thanks, Eric. Pat, back to you.
Well, I'm saddened at the passing of a guy who had an amazing career as a prosecutor and as a senator, and then as an actor in a number of important movies, as well as playing the role of a prosecutor in that show about whatever it is, Special Victims Unit, SVU, et cetera, et cetera. Former Tennessee Senator and Hollywood actor Fred Thompson died on Sunday, and he was best known for his roles in the films In the Line of Fire and The Hunt for Red October. Thompson also served 8 years in the U.S. Senate, and the Republican won Al Gore's seat in a special election in 1994 and was reelected to a full term in 1996. He mounted a campaign for president, and he dropped out after poor showing. He died of a recurrence of lymphoma. I thought he was a lot older than that. He's only 73 years old, but I knew him, and he was a very charming man. But his entrance into the Republican presidential nomination, I'm afraid, didn't help anybody, and it certainly did make it tough for the other evangelicals and conservatives to get together. So it almost guaranteed Mitt Romney to have the nomination for the Republican presidential election. But anyhow, we mourn Fred Thompson. He was an extraordinary man. I mean, he was a very fine actor.
Many accomplishments. Yeah.
Amazing. I mean, all those movies he was in is terrific. Okay. John?
He was a highly regarded statesman. Pat, in other news, they waited a year for it, but after just barely losing the World Series last season, the Kansas City Royals are this year's baseball champs, winning the series 4-1 over the New York Mets with a comeback game that went 12 innings last night in New York.
Last year was such a hard defeat for us in Game 7, and everybody came to spring training, I mean, as determined of a group that I've ever seen, that they were going to get back and they were going to finish the deal this time. So from day one, there was no doubt in my mind that they wouldn't accomplish it. There was no doubt in their mind that they wouldn't accomplish it.
It was the Royals' first World Series title in 30 years and their second championship in team history. And Pat, having lived and worked in Missouri, I know a lot of people who are extremely ecstatic about that win.
Absolutely. Of course, the people in New York with the Mets fans aren't exactly ecstatic, but anyhow, it was an interesting series. But the Royals, it was never in doubt. They just swept it, just night after night after night.
A resounding victory.
Were you pulling for anybody?
Well, no, I really wasn't in that. I was pulling for the Packers last night, and I'm in deep mourning today. But
hey, that game was something else, wasn't it?
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy something else, yes.
Yeah. But just... you know, the game that was so amazing was Drew Brees and against the Giants. I mean, it was like 52-49 or something. Who ever heard of a pro football game with that kind of score? And the Giants to lose with 49 points. I mean, it was crazy.
It's the interesting part of sports.
Drew Brees rifled 7 touchdowns, set a record. I mean, just simply amazing.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, okay.
Unbelievable.